On October 4, 2017, Ford Motor Company announced a shift in its investments towards electric vehicles, committing to release 13 new electric and hybrid models in the coming years. This event underscored that, just as a century ago, Ford is ready to defend its leadership in the automotive industry, able to see through the haze of uncertainty a clear path to a successful future. And today, the subject of our next episode will be the man who built this empire, Henry Ford. Watch this video to the end, and you'll learn how Ford managed to overcome all obstacles in his path, what fatal mistakes he made, and what dark and horrible secrets he hides. So let's get started.
News, copyright.
Would be broken up in the open field.
The creator of one of the world's largest automotive empires, Henry Ford, never had a driver's license and didn't drive a car. This outstanding inventor and production organizer couldn't read blueprints and even wrote with grammatical errors. However, none of this stopped him from creating one of the largest business conglomerates on the planet with a capital of around $200 billion. Who was this remarkable man? An outstanding inventor and innovator, or a notorious anti-Semite and admirer of Hitler? A loving husband and father, or a sinister misanthrope and ruthless exploiter? Let's search for answers together. So let's go over some facts you probably didn't know. Delving into the subject. Henry Ford was born on July 30th, 1863, and died on April 7th, 1947, at the age of 83. He was a legendary American industrialist, owner of car manufacturing plants worldwide, inventor, and author of 161 U.S. patents. His slogan speaks for itself: a car for everyone. The Ford plant produced the most affordable cars in the early days of the automotive industry. The Ford Motor Company still exists today. Henry Ford is also known for being the first to use industrial conveyor belts for assembly line production of automobiles. Contrary to popular belief, conveyors were used before this, including for mass production. However, Henry Ford was the first to put on the conveyor technically complex products, requiring ongoing technical support throughout their service life. The automobile. Formation. Henry was born into an immigrant family from Ireland, living on a farm near Detroit. When he turned 16, he ran away from home and went to work in Detroit. From 1891 to 1899, Ford worked as a mechanical engineer, later chief engineer at the Edison Illuminating Company. In 1893, in his spare time, he designed his first car. From 1899 to 1902, he was a co-owner of the Detroit Automobile Company. But due to disagreements with the other owners, he left the company and in 1903 founded his own company, the Ford Motor Company, which started producing cars under the Ford A brand. The company's greatest success came after the introduction of the Model T in 1908. In 1910, Ford built and launched the most modern factory in the automotive industry at that time, the well-lit and well-ventilated Highland Park. At this plant, in April 1913, the first experiment with an assembly line conveyor began, destined to revolutionize the industrial world and make Ford one of the richest and most famous people of his generation. Henry Ford said,
"With enthusiasm, you can achieve anything. Enthusiasm is the sparkle in your eyes, the swiftness of your stride, the strength of your handshake, the irresistible surge of energy and will to execute your ideas. Enthusiasts are fighters. Enthusiasm is the cornerstone of all progress. Success is only possible with it. Without it, you only have possibilities."
Life's work. Perhaps we would never have known about another ordinary industrialist and factory owner if Henry Ford, following his own advice, had not put his heart, strength, and mind into his business. Devoting himself entirely to automobile manufacturing, he not only glorified his name for centuries and amassed a huge fortune, but he also became the embodiment of his era, and his cars became a symbol of their time and an unchanging attribute of wealth and success for millions of buyers. As mentioned earlier, in 1913, the use of the conveyor began. What were the results of this bold experiment? When one worker assembled the engine from start to finish, it took 9 hours and 54 minutes. After the assembly process was divided into 84 operations performed by 84 workers, assembly time was reduced by more than 40 minutes. With the old method of production, when the car was assembled in one place, it took 12 hours and 28 minutes of work time to assemble its chassis. After the installation of a moving platform and various chassis parts were fed using hooks suspended on chains or on small motorized carts, the chassis manufacturing time was more than halved. Henry Ford said,
"The air is full of ideas. They are constantly knocking at your brain. You simply have to know what you want, then forget it and get down to work. The idea will come suddenly. It has always been like that. No task is too great if divided into small parts."
In the spring of 1917, America entered World War I, and Ford changed his pacifist views. Ford's factories began fulfilling military orders. In addition to cars, production of gas masks, helmets, cylinders for Liberty aircraft engines, and eventually light tanks and even submarines began. Ford stated that he would not profit from military orders and would return the profit to the government. Although there is no confirmation that Ford fulfilled this promise, it was approved by American society. Henry Ford wrote,
"Thoughts about the future, constant reflections on how to do more, create such a state of mind where nothing seems impossible."
In 1925, Ford established his own airline, later named Ford Airways. In addition, Ford began subsidizing William Stout's firm, and in August 1925, he bought it and himself engaged in the production of airliners. Perhaps the most unusual acknowledgement of Ford's merits occurred in 1934. On April 13, 1934, one of the strangest letters was received at the Ford plant. It was written by the famous American gangster Clyde, who, along with his girlfriend Bonnie Parker, had American police on their toes. Clyde thanked Henry Ford for the powerful and reliable cars, especially praising the industrialist's pride, the Ford VV8 car. Ford decided not to hide the letter, but on the contrary, to make it public, because any publicity is good except an obituary. Coincidence or not, but in 1934, the Ford plant ended the year with a profit, selling more than 500,000 cars. Henry Ford stated,
"My success secret lies in the ability to understand another person's point of view and to see things from his perspective as well as my own."
Fordlandia, City of the Future. In 1927, Ford, desiring to have his own source of rubber raw materials for tire production, at that time the rubber market was monopolized by the British, planted rubber tree plantations covering an area of 10,000 square kilometers in Brazil on the Tapajós River and founded a settlement called Fordlandia, an ideal city with all the conveniences, as it seemed to him then. Henry Ford wrote,
"A man dies when he stops changing, and funerals are just a formality. For most people, punishment is the necessity to think. An ideal job for them seems to be one that does not require any demands on their creative instinct."
The majority of the city's population consisted of Brazilian workers engaged in rubber tapping, and life in it was organized according to the American model: abstinence from alcohol, in accordance with the dry law then in force, and tobacco, consumption of fast food, strict adherence to the work schedule, and immersion in American culture. However, the venture turned out to be unsuccessful. The territory on which the plantations were planted was unsuitable for growing rubber trees. The soils were sandy, rains were scarce, and moreover, the trees were dying en masse from infestation by the parasitic fungus Microcyclus uli, which is the main natural enemy of rubber trees, as well as from insects and mites. The problems also affected the population of Fordlandia. Plagued by diseases and tired of the forcibly imposed American way of life, in 1930, it simply revolted, though a few days later, the uprising was suppressed by the Brazilian army. In the end, Ford, convinced of the futility of his idea, in 1934 completely abandoned any attempts to produce rubber in Brazil, and Fordlandia quickly became deserted, turning into an abandoned ghost town. In total, this project cost the automobile magnate $20 million. Ford's anti-Semitism. In 1918, Ford acquired the newspaper The Dearborn Independent, which began publishing anti-Semitic articles from May 22, 1920, and also serialized the full text of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. In November 1920, a compilation of articles from the Dearborn Independent was published as a separate book titled The International Jew, which was later actively used by Nazi propaganda. During those times, Ford stated,
If you take the money from the 50 richest Jewish families, wars and revolutions will stop.
On January 16, 1921, 119 prominent Americans, including 3 presidents, 9 secretaries of state, 1 cardinal, and many other U.S. government and public figures, published an open letter condemning Ford's anti-Semitism. In 1927, Ford sent a letter to the American press acknowledging his mistakes. Ford and Nazism. Some researchers are convinced that Ford began financing the Nazi movement in Germany as early as the 1920s, long before Hitler came to power. Both then and later, Henry Ford provided regular and substantial financial support to the NSDAP, Nazi Party, and his portrait hung in Hitler's Munich residence. Ford was the only American mentioned with admiration by Hitler in his book Mein Kampf. Annetta Anton of the Detroit News interviewed Hitler in 1931 and noted a portrait of Henry Ford above his desk. "I regard Henry Ford as my inspiration," Hitler said of the American automotive magnate. Starting from 1940, Ford's factory in Poissy, located in the occupied territory of France, began producing aviation engines, trucks, and passenger cars for the Wehrmacht. During interrogation in 1946, Nazi official Karl Krau, who worked in the management of one of Ford's subsidiaries in Germany during the war, stated that thanks to Ford's collaboration with the Nazi regime, his enterprises were not confiscated. The influence of Ford and his writings on the German National Socialists has been explored by Neil Baldwin in the book Henry Ford and the Jews, The Mass Production of Hate. Baldwin points out that Ford's publications were a significant source of influence on young Nazis in Germany. A similar opinion is held by Albert Lee, the author of Henry Ford and the Jews. It is worth noting that Henry Ford was the only foreigner awarded the highest honor of the Nazi Party, the Order of the German Eagle. In the post-war years, the Ford Company's management sought to distance itself from its Nazi past. For example, a Ford plant was opened in Israel, and anti-Nazi projects were funded by Ford Motors, including the influential film Schindler's List. Ford and Freemasonry. In a compendium of brief biographies of famous Freemasons published by a Masonic lodge, Ford is listed as a member. The Grand Lodge of New York confirms that Ford was a Freemason and was initiated into Palestine Lodge number 357 in Detroit in 1894. When he received the 33rd degree of the Scottish Rite in 1940, he said, "Freemasonry is the best balancing wheel there is in the United States." The life of Henry Ford is a tapestry woven with threads of innovation and controversy. From humble beginnings on a farm to revolutionizing the automotive industry, Ford's journey is a testament to the power of perseverance and belief in victory. However, Ford's legacy is not without its shadows. His espousal of anti-Semitic beliefs and alleged support for the Nazi regime tarnished his reputation and raised questions about the complexities of moral responsibility in the face of power and influence. Ultimately, Henry Ford's life reminds us of the nuanced nature of history and the importance of critically examining the legacies of influential figures. While his impact on industry and society is undeniable, his story serves as a reminder that true greatness is measured not only by achievements, but also by the willingness to confront and learn from one's own shortcomings. As we reflect on Ford's life, may we be inspired to navigate our own journeys with humility, integrity, and a commitment to continuous growth. That's all the facts for today. We'll get back to you in a couple days with a new dizzying investigation. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to always be aware of the most mysterious and amazing events of civilization.